Hello students, welcome back to my channel. Let us continue learning networking concepts. In today's session, we will be learning about different transmission medium. So when it comes to the transmission media, we have wired and wireless. In today's session, we will be mainly discussing about wired transmission media. All right. So what is a transmission media to begin with? A transmission media or a communication channel of network, it is meant that the connecting cables or the connecting media are being talked about. So we are basically talking about the connectivity between the two systems, how they are connected. So this particular media is what we are discussing now. The cables that connect two or more workstations are the communication channels here. Now there are different transmission mediums. So in today's session, we'll be discussing about twisted pair, coaxial cables, and optical fibers. We will see what is the meaning of each one of them, what are the different types of them, and also we will see what is the advantage as well as the disadvantages of using them. So with the very first one, we'll start with the twisted pair cable. Now, twisted pair cable looks something like this. You would have observed it around you, especially in your labs, if you have seen such kind of a wire. This is a twisted pair cable. This is the most common form of wiring in data communication application is the twisted pair. So it consists of two identical twins wrapped together in a double helix. LAN application will tend to use a higher. So here in this particular twisted pair also there are different kinds of grades. So we will be using data grade medium where in which we should be able to transfer the data. That is why we will be using data grade medium. Okay. So what is the advantages of twisted pair? It is simple and physically flexible. It can be easily connected. It is easy to install and maintain. It has low weight and it is inexpensive. All these things, features makes it very commonly used communication channel. Now, there must be disadvantages as well, isn't it? Its low bandwidth capabilities makes it unsuitable for broadband applications. The bandwidth is very low, hence it is for all the applications we cannot be using this. Okay. Because of high attenuation, it is incapable of carrying a signal over long distance without the use of repeaters. Now, attenuation, when I talk about this, suppose this is a source, when I'm sending, if I have a 1 kilometer, for example, wire, after reaching certain length, the signal strength weakens. Okay, so I need to use repeaters where it will strengthen the signal and it will send further. Okay, it will strengthen and send further. So that is nothing but your attenuation. So it has a high attenuation that it cannot be transferred for a very long distances. Okay, and you need to use repeaters in that case. Next is it support maximum data rates 1 Mbps without conditioning and 10 Mbps with conditioning. So that is the maximum data rate it can send. If you want to send more, then it is not possible. Though it is very cheap and very flexible and very easy to use, these are the disadvantages which of this twisted pair. All right. So now when it comes to the twisted pair also there are two types. One is shielded, another one is an unshielded twisted pair. Let us see what is an unshielded twisted pair. Unshielded twisted pair or UTP cable. So the first what we see in the initial image, this is similar. That is nothing but an unshielded twisted pair. So these are the pair of two insulated copper wires twisted together without any other insulation or shielding and hence are called unshielded. So usually what we see these two twisted pairs like this, if there is no shielding to each one of them, then it is called as unshielded. As you can see here, they are not shielded from each other. They are very plain here. That's why it is unshielded twisted pair. They reduce the external interference due to the presence of insulation. Unshielded twisted pair cables are arranged in pairs so that we can add new connection whenever required. That is the reason it is always in pairs. All right. So this is your unshielded twisted pair. Now in unshielded twisted pair itself, we have different types. The very first one, category 1 is voice grade. Communications only, we cannot send data in this. Category 2 is data grade transmission up to 4 megabits per second. Category 3, again data grade 10 megabits per second. Category 4 is data grade transmission up to 16. And then category 5 up to 1000 Mbps. Of course, they are how expensive they are totally depends on what grade they are. Also, what is the number of bits we are able to send through that. So these are the different types when it comes to the UTP cable. Next one is a shielded twisted pair. Opposite to the UTP is STP. As you can see here also we have twisted pairs, but they are individually insulated. As you can see here, it is insulated each of the pairs. So this type of a cable comes with shielding of the individual pairs of wires, which further protects from external interference. So whenever we are transmitting of data, if there is no this extra shield, then what happens is the noise. Noise is nothing but the disturbance in the data. It is more prone to disturbance. But if you have that extra shield, then it will protect it from the external interferences. But these are also like UTP can have maximum segment length of 100 meters. Okay. And the advantages of STP over UTP is that it offers greater protection from the interference. That is a very main advantage when it compared to UTP and STP. But it is definitely heavier, of course, because we are insulating the entire line, isn't it? So that is why heavier, and of course it will become costlier than UTP and requires proper grounding at both ends. Without that, then there will be problems. So that is here is advantage as well as a disadvantage compared to the UTP. So the next set of cables, what we'll be learning is coaxial cables. Now this is a coaxial cable you would have seen in your TV cables, especially cable connection. If you have, you would have seen these kind of cables. So coaxial cable is a type of a guided media made of plastics and copper wires which transmit the signal in electrical form. This is important. Signal is transferred in the form of electrical form. So in coaxial cable also we have two types. One is called as the thick net, another one is called as the thin net. As you can see here, there is thick net and thin net. So what is thick net? This form of a coaxial cable is thicker than the thin net. The thick net coaxial cable segments can be up to 500 meters long. Okay. Now what is thin net? This form of a coaxial cable is thinner and it can have maximum segment length of 185 meters. That is, using this cables, nodes having maximum distance of 185 meters can be joined, which means thick net is the one which you can use if you have a nodes, that is your systems longer than 185, then you will have to use thick net. Otherwise, if it is shorter distance in your LAN and all, if you're using, you can use thin net coaxial cables. So what is the advantages of coaxial cable? The cost of the coaxial cable is less. It is less susceptible to noise or interferences compared to the twisted pair, okay? Because we have here plastic and also electric form data is being transferred. It supports high bandwidth signal transmission compared to the twisted pair. It is easy to wire and easy to expand due to flexibility. It allows high transfer rates with coaxial cables having better shielding material. Okay, so since we have a better shielding material of plastic and also we have a higher bandwidth, it's comparatively better than your UTP or STP. So what is the disadvantage here? It is bulky. As you know that if at all it's a long distance, we have to use the thick net and it is very bulky. It is expensive to install for long distances due to its thickness and stiffness. As single cable is used for signal transmission across the entire network. In case of failure in one cable, the entire network will be down. This is another problem, wherein which in our twisted cable, we had multiple cables options. But in coaxial cable, though it has a higher bandwidth, less susceptible to interferences, it has a disadvantage that the entire network will be down in case of any issue. The security is great concern as it is easy to tap the coaxial cable by breaking it and inserting a T-joint. T-joint is something like this, okay? So suppose if you have a cable going like this, anybody can tap into it and collect the data. This is another threat and it must be grounded to prevent the interferences. So these are the main disadvantages of your coaxial cable. Last one is optical fibers. Now, optical fibers usually we would have seen in many toys and everything. Here, the data is transferred in the form of light that you should remember. Okay, optical fibers consist of thin strands of glass or glass-like materials which are so constructed that they carry light from source at one end to the fiber to the detector at the another end. So remember, optical fiber always transforms data in the form of light. So you should have a sender at the one end and you should have a receiver at the another end, which are both should be light source as well as the one which can receive the light. The light sources used are either light emitting diodes, that is, your LEDs are used as a source, as a sender. The data to be transmitted is modulated onto the light beam using the frequency modulation technique. There are different frequency modulation techniques where our data will be transformed in the form of light. Okay. The signals can then be picked up at the receiving end and demodulated. So at the receiver also, you should have a converter which can convert these light data signal in the form of a light into the data form. The bandwidth of the medium is potentially very high for LEDs. This range is between 20 and 150 Mbps, and higher rates are possible using LEDs. Okay, so this is the advantage. Data can be transformed fast and it can be transformed in the very high bandwidths. That is the advantages of using optical fiber. So it is immune to the electrical and magnetical interferences. Any electrical or magnetic interference will not bother this. Why? Because here the data is transferred in the form of light. Noise in any form, because the information is traveling in a modulated light beam. That is why no noise can interfere with that. It is highly suitable for harsh industrial environments. Industries where they use a lot of electrical magnetic things and all, you can use optical fiber. It guarantees source transformation and has a very high transmission capacity. Optic fiber cables can be used for broadband transmission where several channels are handled in parallel, okay, where it is more susceptible to interferences. That is where you can use optical fiber. Because when you are using multiple band frequencies, multiple transmission parallelly, you are sending data, there is more prone that this data gets interfered by this data gets interfered by this data. But in case if you're using an optical fiber, there is no possibility of that getting interfered. Now let us see the disadvantages of optical fiber. Compared to copper, the cost of producing optical fiber cable is higher due to the need of specialized test equipment. Installation is more expensive. Obviously, as we are seeing, the UTP, the twisted pairs were less expensive, but we had more noise problems. So next came your coaxial cable. Coaxial cable were better, but then expensive. But then fiber, optical fiber, now they are better in transmission, but they are high, cost is high. So as the cost is increasing, the performance is also increasing. So if you want a better performance, you will have to spend more. Fiber optic cables are more brittle than electrical wires like copper cables. Since they are composed of glass, they will break if you bend them too much. So they are not very flexible. In order to prevent network disruption, the fibers must be appropriately slide, whether establishing a new fiber optic network or growing an existing one. This is a very sensitive operation and the signal will suffer if the fibers aren't joined correctly. This is expansion is also a problem here because we are talking about the transmission of light, data in the form of a light. So when you're doing, if you have already had this much cable, if you're adding another cable, this addition, whatever you're doing, has to be done properly. Otherwise, different signal might be sent. The fiber optical cable is extremely prone to being cut or damaged during installation or other construction renovation activity because of how small or compact is. This is another problem here. So these are the disadvantages of your optical fiber. So we have learned three kinds of transmission media in today's session. So in the coming session, we will see the wireless transmission mediums and learn more about that. Till then, thank you for watching. Keep learning.